The CDC extended the moratorium not once, but 3 times. We made clear when we did the last extension that that would likely be the last extension because of the legal limitations.
That's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki lying to the American people about the so-called limitations of the federal government in regard to extending the now expired moratorium on evictions. Now, since that press conference was held, the Biden administration has released yet another statement indicating that they will in fact extend the moratorium, but in a more measured way. So let me give you those details. An official familiar with the matter says the announcement will not be another nationwide eviction freeze, but something more limited and targeted in places with high COVID spread, meaning the entire country. I mean, obviously COVID is spreading more rapidly in places like Florida or Arkansas, but we all live in one country. And as we know, this is a virus that spreads pretty rapidly. But nonetheless, they claim that this is gonna be a more targeted approach. A source familiar with the effort said the announcement would be a 60-day moratorium for counties with high or substantial transmission, covering 80% of US counties and 90% of the US population. Now, why are they doing this? Why is this a more targeted approach, even though this is gonna cover 90% of Americans? Well, they're concerned about this being challenged in the Supreme Court. Brett Kavanaugh, in a recent Supreme Court decision related to moratoriums, said that he would allow the moratoriums to continue through July 31st, but after that, his opinion, it was his opinion, right? He didn't rule on this, but in that opinion he wrote, but the federal government probably shouldn't extend the moratorium further. Now, because of that opinion from Brett Kavanaugh, the executive branch, the Biden administration, decided, oh no, then that means we can't do it. I mean, our hands are tied, we can't extend the moratorium. But in this case, obviously they have extended the moratorium. Their argument is, since they're doing it in a more targeted way, citing the pandemic as the reason, it's less likely that it'll get struck down in the Supreme Court.
Okay, so lots to go over here. First of all, just thank Cori Bush, she did it.
Yeah.
Just break down what actually happened here. And at the end of one of the mainstream media articles about it, they say there's some chance that the Biden administration acted because of the quote, extreme pressure put on by other Democrats. There you go. Why do we fight? We fight so that it has a result. So Cori Bush being out there for day after day, sleeping outside on the steps of the Capitol, and going through all that personal pain, and other Just Democrats and other progressives coming to help her, it just saved hundreds of thousands of families, if not millions of families across the country from being evicted. That is a gigantic difference in people's lives. And I can tell you, having covered politics for a very long time, that if Cori Bush hadn't done that and the progressives in Congress hadn't put pressure on both Pelosi and Biden, there would have been a 0% chance that the Biden administration would have acted.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, think about it. It's not a good look for the White House to have a member of their own party sleeping on the steps of the Capitol to raise awareness about the fact that it's just unjust to let the moratorium expire like that. It's embarrassing for the Biden administration. So it shows you that if progressives are willing to fight, and if they're willing to hold their own accountable within the Democratic Party, they could actually make some pretty significant gains. And they should take this momentum, they should take this, I guess, newfound power all the way to the infrastructure fight and ensure that they get the reconciliation bill passed.
So mainstream media tells you that progressives should never fight, it's pointless and they're stupid to fight. And sophisticated people just give up instantly and do whatever corporate rule tells you to do. In fact, as I've said now on many occasions, the LA Times, in their endorsement of my opponent in the race that I ran, said that they agreed with me on the policies, but that I wasn't civil enough. They like a Congress that's more civil. Well, Cori Bush went in, started good trouble, and she wasn't civil. And guess what? It made all the difference. And that's why they want you to be civil, because they don't want to change anything. So the mainstream media and corporate Democrats are 100% wrong. Okay, now by the way, on the other side, there are crazies on the alt left who told you just attack Cori Bush and attack all the Justice Democrats. They're never gonna do anything. They never did anything. And in the middle of her doing it, they're still attacking her, right? And guess what? You were wrong too. It turns out there is hope. There is something you could do. And when progressives do fight back strategically on an issue they can win on, then it makes a giant difference. Nope. I want to destroy everything, one side says. The other side says, don't ever touch anything, it's beautiful as it is. It isn't beautiful as it is. Millions of people could have been evicted if Cori Bush and the other progressives didn't step in. All right, now on to Jen Psaki. Look, let's be honest about it. When she said earlier, oh, Joe Biden administration is doing everything we can. Oh, yeah. No, that was not true. And in fact, in that first set of answers, she actually did tremendous damage to the cause.
Yes.
When she said that there was no legal basis for them to have a moratorium on evictions. Now, when you do the moratorium, you just told the Supreme Court they should rule against you because you said there was no legal basis for it. And why did they punch themselves in the face like that? Number one, because they had never intended to take action. They were lying from day one. They only did it because of the extreme pressure put on by just Democrats like Cori Bush, okay? And number two is that if it does go to the Supreme Court, they don't want to win, they want to lose. It's for the same exact reason why they never want to take action in the first place, because they've had millions of dollars from real estate interest poured into their campaign coffers.
Exactly.
There are no mainstream media reporters. David Sirota, along with Ryan Grimm, are probably two best reporters in the country. And Sirota, again, at Daily Poster, broke the story of millions upon millions of dollars, including $1 million that just came in I was gonna say last month, we're in August. It came in June by a giant real estate interest to say, nah, be cool, Democrats, be cool. And yet none of the mainstream media reporters apparently have any idea what's going on. You read the articles, and I've read so many of them now. They're all so credulous. They're like, oh, the Biden administration is working around the clock to find a legal avenue for this. Are you serious?
No, and look, what the media does in withholding critical information from the American people is they're the ones who end up losing trust, right? People don't believe anything they have to say, anything that they're reporting, which is why, as problematic as some of the behavior from QAnon conspiracy theorists might be, we need to understand why it is that they're so willing to reject anything coming from legacy media outlets or corporate media. And instead they'll believe some of the charlatans that you see online, because the charlatans don't have the long track record of withholding this critical information from the American people. So I think it's always important to keep that in mind, right? It's very easy to be overly judgmental toward your fellow Americans, and I've been there, I've made those mistakes quite a bit. But at the same time, we need to understand what's broken institutionally in order to fix things moving forward. But with that said, I do want to also give you one other statement coming from the White House. This is a Biden administration official in regard to the moratorium. The official says, quote, the CDC determined that the Supreme Court banned an extension of the existing moratorium, but what they will issue today is an entirely new one, different in form and structure. So the argument here is, no, since this is a targeted moratorium, it's different and is unlikely to be struck down by the Supreme Court. But let me also make sure that you guys understand something. The Supreme Court has not ruled on the notion of an extension for the moratorium. They haven't. Brett Kavanaugh, a single Supreme Court justice, just wrote a quick little opinion related to a different case. So let me give you the background. I want everyone to understand this. So every time the federal government lies to you, every time a Biden administration official lies to you, you'll know what really went on behind the scenes. So there was a Supreme Court ruling pertaining to landlords who actually wanted the moratorium to end early. Now it expired on July 31st, but these landlords are like, oh, we don't want to wait that long. Can you just get rid of it now so we can evict people who aren't able to pay their rent? Supreme Court ruled on that. The case was Alabama Association of Realtors versus HHS. Although the moratorium was set to expire on July 31st, a group of landlords and realtors asked the Supreme Court to lift the moratorium early, effectively allowing landlords to start evicting many of their tenants right away. Now, in a 5-4 decision with Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh crossing over to vote with the 3 liberal justices, the court denied this request, leaving the protections in place for another month. month. Kavanaugh, however, wrote a very brief opinion warning the Biden administration not to extend the moratorium beyond July. All right, I mean, Biden could have just called his bluff and extended it anyway. Let it play out through the courts, which of course buys time for tenants who are in a tough spot. But he was unwilling to do that until there was enough pressure by Cori Bush, by progressive Democrats to act. And so they come out with this, I mean, I wanna say it's a half measure, but it's not. It covers 90% of Americans. But I think that they did this not because they're afraid of the Supreme Court. I think they did this because they got caught lying to the American people.
100%. And in fact, look, I don't know. There's several progressives who were calling them out on this is what you're saying is not remotely true. And when people started agitating about, hey, how about the real estate money? All of a sudden, in the middle of the day, the administration comes out and goes, well, it turns out we thought we had no legal basis, but we just magically found legal basis. Oh, funny how that works, right? And look, I'm gonna read something from our members because I love you guys and we do this show together. Mickey C. the Silver Dragon said, looking over the comments, it looks like the chat room is sizzling with electricity. Amazing what hope can do. And so that's exactly right. You fight, you win, all of a sudden you got hope, and that leads to more and more victories. Then we go and fight on $15 minimum wage, we go fight on Medicare for all, and we do this one step at a time, and we do it strategically and smart, just like Cori Bush did. And I told you that Cori Bush would make a difference, and here's Cori Bush making a difference. So look at people's track records. Did they get things accomplished, etc. But the reason, part of the reason I read that, and another member, Mathematician, wrote in talking about, look at today's, what's happening today. Cori Bush gets an amazing victory that would not have otherwise happened, and we know for that for sure. Nina Turner's elections tonight. If she wins, oh my God, massive hope. And Andrew Cuomo, probably the worst neoliberal in the country, the worst corporate Democrat in the country, very likely is done. So that is tremendous hope all in one day. And a lot of that brought to you by you guys, the audience that made it happen, and these progressives that fought against unbelievable odds and through a lot of adversity.
Yeah.
And I can't say it enough, Cori Bush is an American hero. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.